Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this Cabinet meeting. So, unfortunately, the Leader and Deputy Leader are away on business at the moment. So, can I ask for a nomination for a chair, please?
Yes, thank you. Can I propose that Councillor Jenny Hollingsworth chairs today, please?
Thank you. Can I have a seconder, please? Just for the record, Councillor Ron McCrossan seconded. So, thank you. Over to the chair, which is now Jenny. Welcome.
And welcome to today's Cabinet meeting, 6th of October. This meeting is being recorded. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Jenny Hollingsworth. I'm a portfolio holder for Sustainable Growth and Economy. To my left-hand side is Alison Ball from Legal, and Eugene Minogue, who is the head of... I've lost track of... Environment Communities, thank you. All the names have changed and I've lost track. Apologies. To my right is Mike Hill, who's the Chief Executive. On his right-hand side is Caroline McCleary, who is going to be recording manually the minutes. And to the extreme right is Ben Hopewell, who will take care of our technology. So thank you and welcome. We've had apologies from the Leader and Deputy Leader. Are there any further apologies? No, thank you. Item 2, to approve as a correct record the minutes of the meeting held on the 4th of August. Everybody happy that they're a true and correct record? Councillor Ellis? You're just moving. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Can they be approved? Thank you very much. Item 3 is declaration of interest. Has anybody got any declarations of interest relating to an agenda item on this meeting? No, thank you very much. Forward plan is really to note. Our Cabinet happy to note that there's forward plan. Thank you very much. Item 5. Journey to net zero, climate change, culture and behaviours. Sam, are you doing this one? Sam Palmer, thank you.
Thank you. My name's Sam Palmer. I'm the Food, Health and Housing Manager here at Gedling. I'm going to present this report with our Climate Change Officer, Sim Dura. So this report follows on really from a raft of work we've been doing as a council, following on from the declaration of a climate emergency and then the climate change or the carbon management strategy that was adopted by Cabinet in March earlier this year. So this report is around embedding a climate change culture within the organisation, and it asks, it sort of relates to our behaviours, our actions, our decision making, the choices we make. And it really builds on the good teamwork that we do as an organisation. We found with the pandemic, when we pulled together to tackle a public health crisis, that we really work well as a team and we help to protect the community, and we need to do much the same to protect the community from climate change. So this follows on from a report that went to SLT a couple of weeks ago, which asked for a number of changes to sort of embed this culture. And these are changes to the employee standards, the Gedling employee, the Gedling manager, and the Gedling leader standard to introduce a climate change champion approach. So that's for all officers to behave in a way that protects the environment, enhances the environment for present and future generations. We've also asked to review and put a section in our performance development reviews so that we can focus on the environment and potentially make pledges. Just recently, last week, we had some carbon literacy training for heads of service and other managers within the organisation, and we'd very much like to roll that out to members and other staff within the organisation. And then the report also asked for a new corporate environmental group made up of heads of service and sort of key officers to really sort of drive forward this agenda. And central to this whole approach is the corporate environmental policy, which this report asks to adopt. So I'd really like Sim to just step in now and just talk you through the policy, if that's okay.
Hi, so I'm Sim Dura, the Climate Change Officer. So as Sam's just relayed, we have got a corporate environmental policy statement. The reason behind this, it sets up a precedent for Gedling Borough Council. It embeds our policy with our commitment of getting to net zero by 2030. So the environmental policy statement has various themes. We've got 7 in total. It states our commitment, so we've got these 7 themes, one starting with a positive environmental culture. The next one is built environment and transport. The third one is energy, nature resources and climate change, environmental awareness, waste reduction and recycling, blue-green infrastructure and biodiversity, procurement and purchasing. So we've got some details of that, and there are further suggestions of how we actually adopt this policy, which obviously will come down further down the line. But at this moment in time, it's all about embedding this culture and encompassing that area of change for Gedling Borough Council.
Thank you very much for that. Anybody comments? Councillor Ron McCrossan, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to congratulate the team that put the report together on these 7 key points, and will continue to do so. Obviously, any major significant change in an organisation takes time to bed in, but I think what this shows and the commitment that's been shown for meeting the 2030 net zero approach aim is that there is incremental improvements in the structure and the organisation. And I think culturally, changing the culture in an organisation is a significant move. It does take time, but the structure that's being put in place, particularly the performance development reviews, I think are going to be a key part of that, particularly if you're giving people the initiative to come forward and give suggestions of how the organisation might improve. So they have ownership of what's happening within the organisation. Also, the setting up of a corporate environmental group, I think, will be crucial to moving forward as well. So I very much welcome the report and the work that's been done by the team. I think it's a massive move forward and part of the annual progress that's going to happen. So well done. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to make any comments? No, just following what Councillor McCrossan said, I think we'd all like, the whole Cabinet would like to thank the team for their work. We've got an ambitious target, and as Councillor McCrossan said, those incremental steps towards that 2030 ambition are really, really important. And the fact that staff are going to be involved, it's quite often the people that are working on the ground that come up with the really most fruitful ideas, because they are doing the work at that level. So we need to listen to everybody and bring forward those good sustainable ideas. So thank you very much for that. Thank you. We need to agree the recommendation on page, I think I might need a hard copy. Can't cope with this. To note the actions currently being taken to address organisational culture in respect of climate change, and to approve the environmental policy statement, which is at Appendix A. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Right. The next item is item 6 is a review of complaints received by the Council and annual review letter, Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman 2021-22. That's the report of the Head of Corporate Governance and Customer Services.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll be picking up this report in the absence of Fran today. So as members will be aware, this is a report that's brought annually to Cabinet, which sets out the statistical data in relation to the volume of complaints that the Council have received, both through our internal complaints procedure and those that have been received via the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman. Just by way of background, the Council has a two-stage internal complaints process. If an individual is not satisfied with how their complaint is handled through that process, then they do have the right to complain to the Ombudsman. The Ombudsman will then determine whether or not they should investigate that complaint. The report sets out by department the number of Stage 1 complaints received in 21-22. The numbers overall remain very similar to last year, with 511 complaints received in 21-22 compared to 510 in the previous year. That is still, though, a marked increase of 132 from the complaints received in 2019-20. At Stage 2, so of the 511 complaints, 32% of those were upheld at Stage 1, which is consistent with last year's figures. At Stage 2, 41 complaints were considered, an increase of 25 from last year. 22% of those were upheld, which is slightly lower than last year when 37% were upheld. More detailed information on the nature and volume of complaints is presented to SLT on a quarterly basis, and that forms part of the Council's performance monitoring. And in general terms, there has been a slight decrease in complaints to waste, plastic and public protection in last year, whereas other departments have experienced a slight increase. The Council has received 13 complaints from the Ombudsman in 21-22, which is an increase from the 2 complaints in the previous year. However, 2021 saw the Ombudsman stop dealing with complaints for part of the year due to COVID-19. So whilst the Council were made aware of 13 complaints, the Ombudsman also received other complaints about the Council which it rejected without making the Council aware. In total, 19 complaints were made to the Ombudsman in relation to the Council. Only three of those complaints proceeded to investigation by the Ombudsman, and 2 of those were upheld. Members will recall that both of those upheld complaints were reported to Cabinet by the Monitoring Officer in line with Section 5A of the Local Government and Housing Act, and a summary of those complaints are detailed in the report. In both cases, the Ombudsman made no recommendations as to remedy, as the Council had already apologised and no further recommendations were made by Cabinet. The Ombudsman have published their annual review letter, which is attached in the appendix to the report. This confirms that of the 3 investigations undertaken, 2 of them were upheld. So as a statistic, 67% of complaints have therefore been upheld, which is above the average of 51% for similar local authorities. However, the volume of the complaints that have been investigated is very low. Members may also wish to note that following an increase in more complex complaints in 21-22, the Council's complaints, compliments and comments policy, along with the unreasonably persistent complainants policy and the customer promise, have been reviewed and they're currently out for consultation with staff this week as part of the customer service this week. So these updated policies will then go through SLT and come into Cabinet for consideration. So I'll leave it there, Chair. The recommendation is set out on page 33, and that's to note the information contained in the report.
Thank you for that comprehensive account of agenda item 6. And Councillor David Ellis.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Alison, for the report. I suppose if you thinking back, the last 2 years with COVID, it's been very disrupted and it's been strange, and statistics are very unreliable. I appreciate that. And if you look at this report, if you start at the end, at the number of reports, number of complaints actually upheld by the Ombudsman, it is very small, and there's a danger of using small statistics and getting very silly percentages. I suppose in terms of the review, it's still concerning that there was a 32% increase in the number of complaints since 2019-20. I just wonder if there's been any organisational learning from that that you'd be able to share with us in terms of if there's a way of addressing those complaints.
Yes, so as a part of the SLT quarterly monitoring processes, then we consider complaints through that process and look at the learning actions and points that can be taken to improve service delivery, so that we're not standing still and continue allowing some of those issues to continue if the complaint is upheld. So that is something that we keep an eye on a quarterly basis. I think I'm probably right in saying that there has been generally a trend nationally for increasing complaints to organisations. But it is something that we definitely keep alert to and monitor on a quarterly basis.
Thank you. Councillor Romney.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Caroline, for that update on the complaints, issues and processes. Just as an example, I suppose, in looking at the waste percentage of complaints, one of the things that the point that Caroline's just made is improving service delivery. One of the factors, obviously, looking at waste is we're looking at technology to improve, and I know officers have been in place to look at how we're going to improve the systems that we presently use on the wagons that retrieve the waste, etc. And they do an amazing job on retrieving waste across the borough, a truly amazing job, and the teams that work there work extremely hard, know their rounds, know the bins that they should be picking up, but occasionally, and it is very, very small in terms of the number of bins for this universal service, they miss some bins for whatever reason. There could be inability to get the wagon up a very small road that's got double parked vehicles, etc., etc. But the most important thing is positively, we're looking to improve the service delivery, and I think that's across the board really, which is commendable. So thank you, Caroline. Thank the team for their support in that area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCrossan. That Alison, not. That's fine. It's all right. Yeah, I think you make a good point, and certainly in terms of bin collection, there are all sorts of reasons why bins don't get collected. Some of our roads were not built to accommodate parked cars and refuse vehicles, but I know from personal experience that the staff always make a really hard effort to get back as soon as they possibly can to collect those bins, and all credit to them. It's not an easy job in some areas, so thank you for that. Councillor Viv McCrossan.
Thank you, Jenny. Just to say not to lose the sight, I mean, complaints, clearly we want to reduce what we're doing, and I think there's good evidence that we're always looking to how we can improve what we're doing in the borough. But not to lose sight of the compliments. I'd hate to think that we're losing sight of compliments, because we have had a lot of compliments. And it's great to see that Leisure have had, again, 71 compliments. I think that, people have got busy lives. I think taking time out to actually compliment the borough, I think, is great. We know that sometimes that does get overlooked, but I would like to say well done to those teams where clearly people feel that they've had a good service delivery, and I think that's great. So well done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any more questions, comments? So the recommendation is to note the details of the annual review letter and the local government and social care ombudsman, and the information in relation to the number of complaints dealt with through the internal complaints procedure in 21-22. Can I move that from the chair? Can I have a seconder? Councillor Ellis, thank you very much. Everybody happy to agree that? Thank you. Lovely. Right. Item 7 is Gedling Borough Council Interim Planning Policy Statement on First Homes. And this is going to be introduced by the Head of Development Place, Mike Avery. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Chair. So the report seeks approval of the Interim Planning Policy Statement, First Homes. First homes are a specific kind of discounted market sale housing and meet the definition of affordable housing. First homes are now the government's preferred discount market tenure and should account for at least 25% of all affordable housing units delivered on a site, or 10% of the total dwellings delivered on a site, whichever is the greater. The national criteria for first homes is detailed in the planning practice guidance. Qualifying homes must meet the following criteria: a minimum 30% discount against the market value. The initial sale cannot be at a price greater than £250,000, and the annual household income must not exceed £80,000. Local planning authorities have discretion to increase the discount above the national minimum of 30%, vary the price cap, and include additional eligibility criteria. We've commissioned new evidence about the application of the First Homes policy in our local housing market area. The study emphasises that Gedling Borough the priority for Gedling Borough should be to secure affordable housing for rent. With regard to First Homes, the study makes a number of recommendations. Firstly, there's no strong evidence to support an increase in the 30% discount for First Homes. Secondly, there is strong justification to support capping the price of a first home on the initial sale at £173,000. Thirdly, the household income cap should be £38,800, and also a local connection test is recommended. The interim policy statement responds to these recommendations. The document sets out the background, planning policy context, and evidence for First Homes in Part 1. Part 2 of the document sets out Gedling Borough Council's requirements for First Homes in a series of policy statements. So this includes 4 statements. So Statement 1 sets out that on developments comprising 10 to 14 dwellings, 10% of the total number of proposed dwellings on site should be First Homes. For developments comprising 15 or more dwellings, after applying the 10, 20 or 30% target for affordable homes requirement, depending on the location, in accordance with our local planning document policy 36, the calculation of tenure split will ensure that 10% of the total number of dwellings proposed on site should be for First Homes, and that First Homes should account for at least 25% of the affordable housing units delivered on site. The remaining requirement for affordable housing should be affordable housing for rent. Statement 2 confirms the nationally set discount of 30% applies. The initial sales price is capped at £173,000 to reflect local house prices for affordable housing. Statement 3 sets an income cap to a value not exceeding £38,830 to reflect the local situation. And Statement 4 sets out our local connection test for applicants. Cabinet, it's recommended that the interim planning policy statement, First Homes, is approved in accordance with the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mike. I think the report is really clearly laid out, and the examples are very useful. And developers have been made aware of that this policy will be coming to Cabinet today. Clearly, they will need to use that as guidance on their sites, because there is a difference in the calculations from over 15 to 10 to 14 on this particular one. So, some questions. Councillor David Ellis.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd echo your thanks to Mike for a clearly set out and understandable supplementary planning document. And we know from the Planning Committee meetings that the committee is concerned about the number of affordable homes in the borough. You'll excuse me if I'm slightly sceptical about the First Home scheme. I mean, this is a successor, as I understand it, to the government starter home scheme, which was criticised by the Public Accounts Committee and the National Audit Office for having spent 174 million and not delivered a single starter home. So it's not a success. But I think this is a sensible implementation of the policy, and it clearly doesn't help social tenants or people who want to be social tenants who tend to have lower incomes and have great difficulty in getting a deposit. So I would echo Mr Avery's comments that the emphasis within the area needs to be on affordable homes for rental, and I very much support that. Otherwise, I'm happy to support the document. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Anybody else wish to make a comment? No, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's some years ago now, but we looked very closely and seriously, and officers spent a considerable amount of time looking at starter homes on one of our sites, and it was absolutely a non-starter, and that clearly applied at great cost to all of us across the country, because there wasn't one built in the end. So we just wait and see, but the policy is here. It's based on robust evidence and is applicable to Gedling Borough. So the recommendation is to approve Gedling Borough Council interim planning policy statement, first homes appended to this report. Somebody like to move? Councillor Vin McCrossan, seconded by Councillor David Ellis. Can we agree that recommendation, please? Yes, thank you very much. 5-year land supply is at number 8. I think, Mike, you're going to introduce this one as well. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this report sets out the latest Gedling Borough Council 5-year housing land supply position as of the 31st of March 2022. The National Planning Policy Framework requires that local planning authorities update their 5-year housing land supply assessment on an annual basis. The assessment includes housing sites in the Aligned Core Strategy, local planning document, and other smaller sites that are available now, suitable and achievable now, with evidence that the sites will be progressed within the next 5 years. The 5-year period is the 1st of April 2022 to the 31st of March 2027. The methodology to calculate housing supply and the annual local housing need figure is set out in the report. The assessment shows that against the housing target as calculated using the standard methodology, Gedling Borough Council does have a 5-year supply plus 5% buffer of land for housing. The council has a 7.25-year supply. This is an increase from the previous 2021 assessment figure of 6.32-year supply. The main reason for this increase is twofold. Firstly, the buffer that needs to be provided has reduced from 20% to 5% to reflect the results of the housing delivery test published in January 2022. Secondly, there's a high level of completions anticipated from planning permissions relating to sites allocated in the Aligned Core Strategy and in the local planning document. It should be noted that data aside, it's clear to see on the ground that there are a number of new housing developments that have been mobilised across the borough and are now delivering much needed new homes. Chairman, it's requested that the Cabinet note the content of the Gedling Borough Council 5-year housing land supply assessment for 2022 as set out at Appendix A. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I mean, you'll all be familiar with this report, which comes every year. It's a very positive report in terms of the land supply we've got. I'd personally like to thank the planning policy team who've pulled together this report and for the work that's gone into it, but also the wider planning department who work their socks off to ensure that conditions are right, supported by our robust policies, to ensure that developers are in a position to develop the sites that are identified. That's clearly happened. You only got to look at the figures. So it's a really positive result, and just thank you to everybody, and obviously our developers who build the houses for us, because we do start to get some of those affordable homes that we need on the larger sites, so that's really important. But I'm sure Cabinet would want to pass on their thanks as well, so that's great. Any comments? No? Right. In that case, if I can find the recommendation, I shall. 75. 75, is it? Oh, yes. Okay. Thank you. Right. Cabinet notes the Gedling Borough 5-year land supply assessment for 2022. Can I have a move? Councillor Ellis? Councillor Wheeler to second? Approved? Thank you. Now we have Item 9, which is the past commercial tree service team, report from the Head of Environmental Services. I think that's you, Mel, is it? Yeah.
It is. Thank you, Chair. This report is regarding the closure of the PASC Parks and Street Care Commercial Tree Team Service and seeks to recommend approval to close the service, whilst noting the background summary and financial impact of this report, and that if approval is given, the resulting changes to staffing structures will be undertaken through the normal report and consultation processes. This is a non-statutory service that we've delivered for a few years, but in recent economic times, the climate has become such that it's one that is unsustainable for recruitment reasons. It's against a backdrop of specialist arborist trained post pay rates rising even higher in the commercial sector, from rates of 27,000 in 2018 to upwards of 30,000 and in some cases up to 38,000 for contract work in 2022. There are no perceived equalities implications, as the staffing posts will be transferred to vacant posts held elsewhere in the establishment. The feedback from the service has always been very positive and well received, but regrettably, for reasons discussed in the report, we recommend that Cabinet close the service, note the background summary and financial impact of this report, and note that if approval is given, the resulting changes to staffing structures will be undertaken through normal report and consultation processes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mel. Yes, it is sad. I know from reports that it was received very positively across the borough, and in fact used to recommend it particularly for people who might have been vulnerable for safeguarding issues as a very safe way of getting their trees cut, and also in terms of health and safety for people who are actually doing the work as well, and those procedures. But clearly we're in a recruitment and retention free zone at the moment, aren't we, in terms of getting people to come and join us. So is there anybody who wants to make a comment or question on that? No. Can we then approve the closure reluctantly of the past commercial tree team service, note the background summary and the financial impact of the report, and note that if approval is given, the resulting changes to staffing structures will be undertaken through the normal report and consultation processes? Can I have somebody to move that, please? Councillor Ron McCrossan, seconded by Councillor Viv McCrossan. Can that be approved? Thank you. Right. A meaty topic next. 10, East Midlands devolution deal. And I think, Mike Hill, as Chief Executive, you're going to introduce that to us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. So the Levelling Up White Paper was published in February 2022 and specifically named Nottingham, Nottinghamshire, Derby and Derbyshire as places the government would like to begin negotiations with over a devolution deal. As detailed in this report, these negotiations progressed at pace and the East Midlands deal was eventually signed in principle by the Secretary of State in conjunction with all the upper tier leaders on the 30th of August 2022. If approved at the end of all this, this will be the first of a new type of combined authority that has been designed for two-tier areas. It offers additional powers and funding in return for the election of a new mayor, which is expected in spring 2024. So the headlines of the deal, again, applicable not just to single authorities, but to all the authorities in Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire are guaranteed new investment of 1.14 billion in total over the next 30 years, and that equates to around 38 million per year. An injection of 18 million capital funding to support local housing and carbon net zero priorities. 17 million for the building of new homes on brownfield land in next year, in 2024-25. And generally, additional controls over a range of budgets at a local level. For example, things like adult education budgets, local transport ones, and some other areas as well. Details of these are all currently being worked on, and the governance arrangements as well by officers of all the authorities involved. So this agreement is subject to the ratification by each of the 4 upper tier councils who are signatories to the deal. So it's quite important here that districts and boroughs are not part of the signatory basis. It is the upper tiers only. And once the upper tiers have signed this, if they indeed will do, it will be followed by a period of public consultation which will be undertaken over the winter months, probably November, December, January time. Bringing it back to our level, for Gedling as a borough council, it is important to note paragraph 2.7 of the report, and that is on page 135 of the pack. And this sets out that the deal respects the importance of the continued role of the 8 Derbyshire and 7 Nottinghamshire district and borough councils, and the reassurance to district and borough councils that no local authority functions are being removed from any local authority in the area, excluding transport functions as agreed with the constituent councils. So what this means is that it protects our powers around planning and housing as a district and borough council. It protects the sovereignty of Gedling Borough Council, so it will continue into the future, which is what we all wanted. And that will be there going forward. And on this basis, the council, the leadership, have supported the deal on this. So I'll leave it there, Chair, and the recommendations are on page 133.
Thank you very much, Mike. Anybody wish to make any observations, comments? Councillor David Ellis.
Thank you, Chair. This is the only game in town, and it's a good game. You know, it's an area that we would want to be involved in terms of placemaking, even if the district council's got limited involvement in it. You know, you can't argue with improving infrastructure, improving adult education, improving skills. You can note that £38 million a year looks like a lot of money if you roll it up over 30 years. But equally, we've just gone through 12 years of austerity. And it'd be interesting to see what the cuts have been to those services. You know, the prospectus talks about things like adult education, and we know that has been decimated by cuts over the last 12 years. Youth service, and we know that's been decimated. Community protection, we know that we're only just getting back to the position of the number of police officers that we had in 2010. So that's still considerably less. Local transport, well, how much better would our local transport be if we'd not had 12 years of cuts? So I'm slightly sceptical about it. If it works, then it's a good investment. I have to welcome it. I say it's just a pity that we're starting from here and not where we were 12 years ago. Thank you.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. We're starting from a very low base, unfortunately, to where we could have actually been. So, yes, it sounds good, and we hope it is good. And the fact that we've kept local autonomy for planning issues, but with a more integrated service in terms of transport would be good going forward. It seems to be an expedited, Mike. It's come forward rather more quickly than we anticipated. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. But we need all those things in place, the adult learning, the skills, the safety and everything else that goes with it. So, but it's signed. We're asked to note the progress to date on the devolution and joint working programme, including the announcement of the level 3 deal offer from government, which was signed on 30th of August. Note the requirement for a formal consultation scheduled to take place over the winter, which Mike mentioned would probably over those remaining few months of the year. Note the proposed formation of an East Midlands mayoral combined county authority with a newly elected mayor, with elections expected to take place in spring 2024, which is actually not that far away, is it? And recommends that the council endorse the East Midlands devolution deal. Would somebody like to move that? Councillor Henry Wheeler, seconded by Councillor Ellis. Everybody happy to take that forward? Thank you very much. come to the end of the agenda. I've not been notified of any items which could be considered urgent. So unless anybody's got anything to raise, I will close the meeting at 2:40 p.m. Thank you very much for attending.